Hey, welcome to this special episode of Hollywood Breaks, where we recap the Oscars highlights, winners, some losers, and of course, the slap. So welcome to Hollywood Breaks. As we promised each other, we were chatting each other the entire Oscars show. It was pretty great to have you guys kind of hammering along with me as the thing was going on. I have to say, the very beginning, I loved the Beyonce music intro. I thought that was incredible, just to kind of break the fourth wall of the red carpet theater, to do something outside, to do something very different and a very Beyonce-esque. It was great. It had to be a big show. It had to be huge highlights, whatever. So I thought that from the very beginning, the show kicked off with some pretty amazing moments.
I did too. I thought it had great energy. Yeah, I agree. The Beyonce thing was really fun and high production value, and it felt current and young and almost Grammy-esque in a way, which was good. That's a good thing, I think, for the Oscars to kind of follow on.
Yep.
And I actually wish it would have gone a little longer. You know, it kind of went a little short for me, but I thought that was great. And I also loved, I was hesitant at first when I heard that there was going to be 3 hosts because I wasn't quite sure how that was going to work, but I actually think that they did a good job. And Amy Schumer's monologue in the beginning, I thought was great, had a good energy. And, you know, I was feeling good about it in the beginning when it kicked off.
Yeah. How about you, Keith? I think you were the one that was probably the most vocal through some of our chatting there.
Shocking. Yeah. I mean, I don't think they're breaking any, new ground with starting with an opening act, because you'll forget 4 years ago they opened with Queen. I mean, the thing, so they've not really breaking any ground. I mean, I wasn't as big a fan of the Beyonce thing as you guys were. I didn't think the song was particularly great, and the background was I know that everyone's like, oh, it's so cool because it looks like a tennis ball, and it was just a little off-putting. I don't know,
a little literal.
Yeah, just a little bit. But you know, I do like the idea that they got out of the theater, got out of the Dolby Theater. That was great. It was nice to see that. Although I read later that they actually recorded that like the day before, so that was actually not live.
Oh yeah, sure.
Taped, which I get. I totally understand. It would have been a lot cooler if it was live though. But I thought it started out with really good energy, and you know, I didn't mind the 3 hosts. I was hoping Amy Schumer for a while there. She was heading down Ricky Gervais territory, but then she pulled back. And I was like, oh, come on, just go a little bit longer. But I thought she did a nice job. I really didn't. Who was the third host? It was Wanda Sykes, and who was it? Was
Regina Hall.
I didn't like the whole "I'm really Randy" bit. It was a little.
The pat down, yeah.
Yeah, it was a little much. I was like, okay, I get it. You know, you got all these good-looking people in the room, so I kind of understand it. But it's like, I don't know. It just, I think that felt a little flat to me. But you know, I felt the pace of it definitely was probably the best pace we've had for quite a few years, I would say. And the way that they treated the other Oscars that were sort of clipped, if you will, I didn't dislike it, and I don't think it was entirely disrespectful. I thought they still got their moment, and they were able to give their speech, and that really what it's about.
The way I watched it, it looked like they were just awarded before the broadcast began, because it was the same stage, same night, same venue, same.
Well, I think that's what happened. They wanted everybody in the theater by 5:00 so they could start the show, and they started awarding, or I think earlier than that. So they started awarding people almost immediately.
Yeah,
and then that's sort of from there.
But I'll say, like, you know, there's obvious things we have to talk about in the next 25 minutes or so, right? There's some craziness that's going on. And I have to say, well, when we get there, I think there was some major disappointment just because of how well the night was going, and what that turn that it made was so horrible. But from our point of view, just from the show point of view, on the basically the award winners, I think that for the most part, the Oscars did a great job of recognizing some of the greater achievements that happened that night. I think Robin, you and I called Coda. I can't remember what Keith's pick was, but absolutely Coda winning was a great highlight. Well deserved. And some of the actor nominees were very well recognized, and great opportunity for that.
Yeah.
Any specific takeaways of the winners, overall winners, that you guys thought were well deserved, or maybe even, or maybe not deserved?
I think Troy was I was the happiest probably for him, because to me it was like his from the second I saw the movie. There wasn't even, I honestly don't even remember who the other nominees were for best supporting actor, because to me it didn't matter. It was Troy's. He was so good.
Yeah,
So I
sure.
was really happy about that.
Yeah, a funny moment too when he was on talking. Just his personality was coming out in such a great way in his
Yeah.
acceptance speech, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great. And then Jessica wasn't a surprise. To me, it was, that one was a tough, probably the toughest race, I think, of, if you look at everyone, best actor and best actress, I think were the two that were kind of close calls. And so I think she genuinely was surprised. I think, you could tell that she was kind of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening, which
Yeah.
was great.
Yeah, I thought her moment was pretty sweet too. Well deserved. Interesting film, by the way. I ended up watching it after the Oscars, before I
Yeah, what
saw
do
it,
you
and
think?
it's pretty interesting. I mean, it's part of a story that I kind of remember, but I
Yeah.
wasn't really part of that scene, or kind of knew all that was happening at the time.
Yeah.
And I had like the outsider's look of like, well, that's kind of a weird organization and what have you. But I thought, interesting enough, she put I mean, pun intended, made it. She put a good face to some of that story too. It really is an interesting angle that they kind of took on it, and she was incredible. Pulled off
Hmm.
the character. Keith, you mentioned in your highlights of actors and actresses playing historical figures isn't the same type of role than playing someone that's fictional and trying to create their own
Right.
character.
I mean, that's
Um,
always been my thing, is sort of, because there's a base to go on, so you can kind of build your character from that versus coming up with something original. Um, so that's always my thing. Like, I know acting is imitating, so it kind of falls under the same rubric, but at the same time, I think it takes more work to come up with a character from words on a page versus, sitting and watching footage and getting the ticks down and all that kind of stuff. And but I don't want to discredit her win. I think, I haven't seen that movie, but from what I've heard, she delivers quite a performance. But I agree. I think that was probably a close one. Although I don't know if it was close, because we have all these awards before, and this is the other thing that kind of annoys me. It's like the Oscars is always last, so it always kind of becomes, all in the last few years anyway, for the most part, it's just become a fait accompli. It's just basically, okay, this is what everybody else is voting. And I think a lot of Academy voters sometimes are like, oh well, yeah, this is what's winning, so okay, I'll vote for this person. Because let's be honest, not all of them are sitting watching all these movies.
mhm.
Like, come on, no, they're not. So I think that aspect of it felt like there wasn't any real surprises, in my opinion. It was just sort of like, oh, okay, yeah, because this is, these are the people that have been winning throughout the entire slog of award season.
Well, without any
So
surprises, already when you're happy that kind of got recognized. For
Hmm.
example, I think with Dune's recognition, and it was
yeah.
recognized very well, especially the technical side. And
Mhm.
they thanked Denny over and over again, which he obviously, as everyone watching this knows, I think he deserved a lot more than just recognition from his
Mhm.
co-heirs. Um, but to me, that's one thing, is like I'm happy that Dune and the way Dune cleaned up. And I'll say, like, I'm very happy that, for all of Coda and how well they were recognized.
Hmm.
So even though there might be predictable, I think there's some great people, I think, that deserved some moment there.
Well, I mean, I'm curious what you guys think about a streamer winning a Best Picture. Well,
I
I
think
mean,
it's
does that?
great. I think it's great. I mean, I don't think, look, the world is changing and we need to change with it. And, I've said this for a long time. I think I remember on the very first podcast when I came here, I thought, like, there needs to be a way, or we discussed it, where I said there needs to be a way where exhibition and streaming isn't like this. Instead, they find a way to become like this, because that really is, I think, the evolution of what's going to happen and what should happen. And what should happen in the only way where both can survive, right? So I think that this is a good step in that direction. Um, but that's just my opinion. I think it's good.
And I think it's one thing that they acquired it they obviously recognized that there was opportunity. They had the means to acquire it and the means to distribute it. Would anyone have seen it if Apple didn't
Well,
acquire it
has
and
anybody
stream it?
actually seen? We don't have the
Oh,
numbers. We have no idea if this movie's a hit or not.
Oh,
I think they're seeing it now. I think more people are seeing it now. After
If they can find it.
if they can find it, right?
The navigation is a little bit tough to find it, but
yes. I mean, I still get people. What's Apple TV Plus? Where's that? Really?
But we weren't talking this way when Inconvenient Truth was reigning, and that's the same studio that distributed it, right? And you recognize that Apple is a distribution method, not necessarily a production method. It's different than Netflix, who's actually trying to make content for their platform and then hoping their content is good enough for an Oscar. In this case, Apple really just bought it and distributed it. So that, I don't know, that doesn't seem to bother me as much. I do think the studios are having a moment and need to kind of figure out what they're doing. As they have to rearrange and kind of work through the last few years. Hopefully they're recognizing the opportunity and picking some new winners. Disney, you didn't have that strong of a showing this year. What's the animated movie that they did in Encanto? Yeah.
I love that movie.
Yeah. Right. It's the latest one you're watching in the back of the car all the time.
Yeah.
But you know what? You know who over and over again I kept seeing is Andrew Garfield. He was not only Tick Tick Boom, he was in
Tammy
Faye. And one other, right? There was a third one. Oh, obviously Spider-Man last year, which had some highlight reels of him in it too. So his face was seen a lot this last year during the show, and very, very well received. I think he had some great roles and great recognition along the way.
He's great. Look, I think the world needs more Andrew Garfield. He makes great career choices, and he's also super likable, and he's got it all. I think he's the real deal.
Yeah, hopefully we'll see more of him. Well, I know we all would agree that the most what was the title? The most superheroist moment of all, or whatever that one clip package was, that the most cheer-worthy moment in film was Flash.
That was disaster.
The one scene that nobody on the planet even knows.
That was bad.
Jack Snyder's Flash doing something.
Snyder, yes.
Or Zack Snyder, sorry.
Yeah, it was his cut of Justice League. I mean, it's because they opened it to Twitter voting, and they got they got bamboozled by it, and it was pretty bad, because it's like, really, most of the people that are even watching were going to be like, wait, what? Huh? What movie's that from? I didn't see that movie, because that was a very geeky, sort of inside the beltway type movie that everyone was clamoring for, because they had felt he had gotten denied his
Keith,
cut.
explain to me what that moment is. Flash running fast? I don't get why that's so cheerworthy. I think that's what Flash does.
At the end of the movie, I don't know if you guys have seen it. Have you guys seen the cut? Robin's seen the cut. Yeah. So at the end of the movie, Flash has to run super fast to create enough heat so that what's the box called, Rob? Do you remember? It's a black box. I can't remember the name of it. So it splits apart.
Infinity, but it's not. That's Avengers.
It's not. It's Avengers. So not the Infinity box. So they can break apart, and because Superman's trying to break it apart, so
he can save the world.
Oh yeah. So they can save the world and split apart, and then Doomsday, or whatever the heck the villain's guy's name is, doesn't get to enter into our world, and that was the end of the movie. And it was like he ran back, and then
I'm just going to tell you,
the way that spectacular.
The way you're describing it makes me think even less of it. I'm just going to tell you, what a horrible clip package.
I mean, but again,
that's putting on a show means you actually edit popular vote choices.
I mean, the mistake was that they opened it to Twitter, and Snyder has a lot of loyal fans who feel he's gotten short riff. Hence the reason the next biggest clip was from Zombie, the Netflix movie that he did. He's just got a lot of loyal fans who will tweet like crazy about him, and that's exactly what happened.
Look, I actually don't have a problem with any of it, because, and I like that they opened it to Twitter, because it's the only place where in the Oscars where we get any recognition whatsoever on movies that people are actually watching, right?
Yeah.
And so it was like I kind of liked it. I felt like it was like, yeah, maybe it's not the best moment in cinema, and maybe not even the best moment in superhero movies. Like, there's a lot better moments. I think so too. But again, I had no problem with it just for that reason. Like, it felt like there was an energy, and actually this was consistent throughout the show for me, that I thought Will Packer and Shayla Cohen did a really good job
Amazing.
of appreciating the movies, and you saw it in everything from like those little moments, those little packages, to Justice League, to also bringing out, I mean, I got chills when like Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, and they all came out together, and then the Pulp Fiction crew comes out together, and I was like, yes, like this is really celebrating the movies, and not just celebrating the movies of this year, but celebrating the art of filmmaking in a way that I felt was really well done. I was happy. That made me happy.
Yeah, I like those moments too. The kind of flashback, was it Pulp Fiction, James Bond, and Godfather?
Goodfellas.
Oh, the James Bond was
Godfather.
and White Man Can't Jump. The James Bond
yeah.
one and White Man Can't Jump were two ones that I was like, First of all, they didn't have any Bonds there, which I thought was weak sauce. No, I don't know the interworkings of whether or not they couldn't get a Bond there, but maybe it's entirely. I know Sean Connery won't do it because he does not get along with the Broccolis. And I know, Robin, you love Tony Hawk. You had him on your wall.
No, Tony, get it right. It was Kelly Slater.
Oh,
Tony
sorry,
Hawk was not
Kelly
on my wall.
Slater. That's right. You did text me because I texted you. This is ridiculous.
Yeah,
I have
have
Kelly Slater on my
problem.
wall.
If you want to show me Kelly Slater, I'm good with it. He can come out whenever he wants.
All right, fair enough.
He just won another championship. The dude's in his 40s, and he beat he is
What
Bond.
does he
like,
have
he
to
is
do
the
with
Bond.
Bond?
I like. Well, they are. When you look at them, they're kind of the Bond of their sport. Every single one of them. I have no problem with it. I thought it was cool. I liked it.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
That was a cool moment too. Might as well break away from some of the Hollywood prestige.
Jeez, I'm getting outvoted a lot on this one. Robin, you're not allowed in here anymore.
Well, let's compare this to one of the worst moments in Hollywood when it comes to Hollywood egos and Hollywood prestige.
Yeah.
It's such an odd moment, right? And I think what's interesting to me is a few days later, I was in a conversation with somebody, and they were unrelated to the Oscars, just talking about how for 3 days they've been playing it over and over again in their mind, and thinking, what's the world coming to when it comes to this? Seems to be very easygoing moment. Clearly, part of the show is the roast. I mean, there isn't a moment in the show where someone's not roasting someone else. If you sit in the front row of a comedy club, you're the target. That's just the way the rules work. And as anyone who's analyzed this, which is probably everyone now, it didn't even seem that offensive when you compare a movie star to really one of the more kick-ass characters on screen. Demi Moore shaving her head to become a Navy SEAL, for God's sake, right? One-arm push-ups and all that kind of stuff. So, someone who shaved their head wearing army green in the front row, very easy target to say, hey, you look like G.I. Jane. But then something very odd happened, like the trigger happened. So I'd love to get you guys a sense of like, what was your feeling like when you first watched it? I mean, are you probably as confused as everyone else? And then what's your takeaway of like, what's this going to mean for us as putting on a show, or Oscars having a show in the future? Like, will we ever be able to turn this sucker around after that moment?
I mean, look, it was from that moment on, it became like a night of should-haves, and
shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Yeah, and look, I think Will, we all have this perception of him, and because much of it is true, right? He is that guy, and everybody has their breaking point. And I don't want to be defensive of violence. I'm not being that, so let me keep talking here. But I do want to say this, where when every single one of us has had a momentarily like lapse of judgment. His just happened to be in front of millions of people, and which is really unfortunate. And it was hard to watch. I think, look, he laughed at first, um, until he saw the humiliation on his wife's face. And then I think that the culture that we're living in this moment made him feel like I have to do something. He's kind of damned if he does and damned if he doesn't in some way. But he took it a little too far. I think the way that he should have done it is like a man, sit back. And I think Will would probably agree with me, where he should have not done anything. And then when he won his Oscar, take that moment out of your speech to actually, respect your wife and call out Chris in that way. And I bet you every night he sits there and thinks about, I should have done this. We don't need to keep punishing him for what he's done. I feel bad. I feel like him and Chris Rock both learned from that night, and it was a very human thing that happened. Now, he shouldn't have done it, and it was ridiculous. And then I think that brings out the should have of the Academy, but also just security in general. I think it showed all it did was highlight more of the elitist, perception that everyone has on Hollywood, where he goes up and assaults somebody and then just gets to go sit back down in his chair and laugh the night away and go have the longest speech in history once he collects his Academy Award. And I think what should have happened in that moment is as soon as it happened, they should have removed him. And he shouldn't have been allowed to accept his Academy Award. And that should have been the punishment. That should have been the end of it.
But I have a feeling they were trying to recover the show, right? I mean, you can hear the producer saying it was like pouring concrete in the room and trying to do whatever they could to recover the show. How much more drastic would have been to have him gone? Like I don't know if it would have. It would have
been, but it would have been what would happen at any other event in the world. If somebody went up and assaulted somebody, they would have been removed from the building. Like here, I look at it as bad parenting. Like I'm not going to the Academy. Like I'm not going to send my kid to her room for slapping someone a week ago. Like I'm going to do it in the moment. I'm going to discipline her in that moment. And the Academy missed that opportunity. And now they've come out with this, punishment that I just like, it's too little too late. It doesn't matter. And nobody cares because you've already shown that everyone's above the law. And that's
Keith,
kind of
what's your thought on the punishment? 10-year ban from being on the show.
Well, I think they should have revoked his nominee status as well. And that would have been a statement. Like, listen, we know we screwed up the night of, but we are not going to tolerate this in any way, shape, or form in the future. And I think that would have put a finer point on it. And I think this is just another missed opportunity in a lot of ways for the Academy to just sort of, be a little bit more forceful and say, listen, this was not acceptable. Yes, he resigned, but you know what? That's, it's still, this has damaged a lot of things about our industry and the show itself, and a lot of people, and the hosts were mortified, and, it did a lot of damage. And it only got worse as the night went on. And I think that was the other part of it, is the speech where he tried to justify it, and then he goes to the Vanity Fair party and dances the night away. And then only 24 hours later does he realize, oops, nobody's really with me on this. I need to apologize. And then it's sort of like, oh, okay. So, listen, I agree a lot with Robin in terms of they should have removed him. But I mean, let's be honest, there's nobody in that room that had the stones to walk up to Will Smith and tell him he had to leave.
Well, and that's the problem, because the police even were letting celebrity dictate that. And that's where it wasn't like, it's not the Academy, like someone in the Academy, Whoopi Goldberg's not going to go up and handcuff him and take him off. It's, it actually is up to the police. Everyone saw it happen. And even the police were like, we're just going to follow your lead. And that's the problem. That was the problem. And that's,
well, let's recognize that this situation is extremely unusual, right? When it's an international broadcast, it's a group of, and it is a closed community. It's not like they don't know each other. It's a closed community of people putting on their own event for their own purposes. I have a feeling they were just in shock as everyone else. I bet you Will Smith was in shock. Chris Rock was in
Mhm.
shock. Everyone was in shock. And then the clock is ticking. Like you can't make decisions. You have to make your decision in a commercial break. And if you don't
Mhm.
yet even understood what happened, how do you have a background investigation, a trial, and come to a conclusion in a 4-minute commercial break? It doesn't really play itself out. So I think that you kind of go, show must go on. In 2 hours, we'll deal with whatever we have to deal with. Right now, we're coming back from commercial break, and
Yeah.
he's going to possibly win the Oscar. Let's keep the show moving. And I think
Well,
that's
yeah,
how
but they
how
could
you
have
make
made a
those decisions.
decision right then and there. If he wins, he's not coming up and giving a speech.
I think from now on, they will know what to do.
Listen,
Nobody
I
had a
know.
game plan for
I
the
know.
best
Well,
support,
this
the
is the
best
problem.
actor
Like,
slapping somebody in the face.
this is like I mean, what was that? 3 or 4 years ago, they announced the wrong Best Picture. I mean, it's just, I mean, and after that incident, the Academy came out and said, we are prepared. We're ready to go. That's never going to happen again. And
Yeah.
then again, something unexpected happens and they just don't seem to know exactly. I mean, I think they knew, when they sent out their statement, said we had asked him to leave, but he refused, which wasn't entirely true.
But
They
even
asked his
that, like, that's not.
publicist to gently suggest maybe he should leave. And like, he's really going to leave. I mean, come on.
Well, the other thing, I mean, to me, it's not even about, it's not, the Academy's punishment is performative at this moment. Like, that's it. All it is to prove to everybody that now they're going to do something because they failed to do something in the moment. But
Mhm.
here's the thing, like, I look at Will Packer, I look at the show that they were running, and he even came out and said, he's like, I thought it was a bit. Because, and like I did too,
Yeah.
when I first saw it. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I get why he thinks that. So I think there is a moment of people taking a step back going, was that on purpose? Was that, like, everyone's looking around trying to figure it out? But here's what should have happened in that moment. It doesn't matter that everyone's thinking that, because the police or security or whoever is there, it's their job to say, remove him, and then they figure it out in that moment. And Chris Rock can say, I'm not going to press charges, like he did say to Will, but that doesn't mean, like, in any other scenario that isn't celebrity, right? In any other scenario, if somebody walked up on stage and slapped somebody else, they would have been removed from the building, and then they would have figured it out in that moment. It'd probably take a couple hours to say, like, what happened, and go through interviews. And yeah, so he misses accepting his Academy Award. Boom, that's your punishment. That's what happens. That's what you get for assaulting someone on stage. And that, to me, would have been enough. And I think that would have gone a long way with audiences. And I think it would have gone a long way with everybody. And I think
Yeah.
Will would have accepted that too. But even the police in that moment, even security in that moment, was like, let's talk about this later. We're going to listen to celebrity, and we're going to let Academy handle this. And it was like, they're not.
Well,
That's
I
not
think
what they're
that's,
built to do.
I also think, Robin, you're forgetting the time and cultural moment we're in. Can think about the optics of the police walking up and walking Will Smith out of the auditorium. Like, that would have been, I mean, and their police are already under
They
a
do it
fine
on a
locus.
commercial break, and they don't have to be police officer. Like, it would be there's ways to handle that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there are a million
I-
different ways to handle it. I just think they made a lot of poor decisions in that moment.
Yeah, and I'm going to
That's
say
good.
they're going to know from now on how to handle it, but I don't know if anybody knew how to handle it in that moment. Clearly,
well,
and
we'll
as
see.
you said earlier, Robin, was a night of should-haves now, right? Not all we're talking about now is should-haves. My greatest disappointment is all the winners after that moment.
Yeah.
Starting with Questlove. I mean, Questlove was robbed from his own moment. Because in an odd way, not Chris's fault, but Chris Rock had a share stage. Questlove had a share stage with Chris Rock, and Chris Rock, you could watch his face slowly recognizing what happened, and then kind of like disrupted the moment in such a way that Questlove, I don't even know if anyone recognizes that he won the Oscar. Nobody's even talking about what a great film he made and what an achievement it was. Totally lost. And then every speech after that, including what now has become almost a ridiculous Best Actor acceptance speech, is something of like, we were all waiting for just a few words about, hey, I'm very sorry about what I did with Chris. And he avoided that whole part of it and tried to justify his action. It's such an odd moment.
Well, I mean, I will say, like, he was angry and he didn't feel Like, I'm not, I think in that moment, Chris or Will didn't feel like he owed Chris an apology, and right or wrong, right? Like, I'm not justifying Will either. I'm just saying,
Clearly
like,
he
I
didn't. He didn't
think in
do
my
it, right?
head,
Yeah.
Right.
yeah, I think he was like, he felt like he disrespected his wife. That's why he did it. So but he was obviously ashamed in how he reacted in that moment. And he has since come out and processed everything.
But
It
the
was a
saddest
very
thing
human
is
thing
like
to do. It's sad. Yeah.
I mean, not so. Then later on, he takes it from the Williams sisters and their life achievement and their story, which is
I
now
know.
tarnished by this moment, and to blame it on Richard Williams himself. Was Richard Williams? There's a scene in the movie where he gets his butt kicked and walks away. Like he's recognizing the bigger man as somebody that doesn't go up and do that kind of thing. And he kind of says, just like Richard, I'm the crazy daddy. Like, I mean, that's a flip on Richard's character, which I thought like he just was taking it away from people over and over and over. And the rest of the night, all he took
And that's why, Robin, I think the punishment should be a little bit more severe because of the after effects of what happened that night. So him just losing his speech isn't enough because of everyone else. Like I don't know if you saw Wanda Sykes interview at Ellen, but she was like, that was awful. And we worked our butts off for months to get that show in shape. And now all anyone is going to remember is the slap.
Yeah.
And it was sickening to watch.
Yeah.
He never apologized to us. He didn't apologize to the hosts. And so I think that's why there needed to be something else other than him not just getting his speech. Like there needed to be a more, because it was not just a seminal moment where he lost his cool, slapped the guy, sat back down, swore a few times on international TV. And then, okay, that's it. Let's all kind of, let's take away his award or his speech. That should be enough because of the after effects of everything that came after that and how the air was just sucked out of the room. So, and it just was a different award show.
With that in mind, Keith, like what, to both of you, the aftermath will continue. Like I'm going to say it's ruined. I mean, I don't know if the Oscars is going to rebound. We clearly aren't going to have that kind of roast mentality. And there was plenty of jabs at people the whole show, from the clip package of, I think it's Wanda Sykes going through the Academy theater
the
and
museum.
and calling out one of the Lord of the Rings characters as Harvey Weinstein and
Gollum.
Yeah. And to like there was this horror, like there is a moment that we've all kind of like as a viewing audience appreciated, that there's this kind of camaraderie, jabbing, familiar feeling in the audience, and the format, the need, the prestige. Like I don't know, but what are you guys' thoughts on the future? Are we going to see? Is this the end of the Oscars? Are we going to see it as a totally different show from now on? And other award shows? Will anyone even care?
You want to go first, Robin? Or do you want me to?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I would say, unless there's I think we have reached the point where award shows just basically mean nothing. I mean, Grammys I think their viewership was even lower than the Oscars. And they have arguably more entertaining acts in a lot of ways, because they're known for bringing musical acts together that you wouldn't necessarily see performing together. So I think it's just an award show. People just don't really care anymore. I don't really know what the future holds. I think for a show like the Oscars, they have to do a complete reinvention. Like, I don't think they'll do that. But that's what needs to happen. If they really want to try to remain relevant, they have to play with the format more. And maybe they will. I don't know. It's an unwieldy organization. They've got 50 people who run it on top of a CEO and a president. So it's like, that's a lot of people with big egos that you're trying to get them to agree to do a thing a certain way. And it's just, I don't know how they necessarily recover from this. I think you're right, Tim, that there may be less of the snarky sort of Ricky Gervais type make fun of at the Oscars moving forward.
Yeah.
And like I said on a podcast with Andrew, I mean, a lot of the comedians were the first ones to come out and say, this is horrible, because now I can't make a joke without worrying about someone coming up and slapping me, because they can't take a joke.
Well, they already feel like that too, because they're already being attacked. Nobody can take it. Like,
right.
Yeah. I laughed at Bill Maher said last week, I saw it on his New Rules segment where he said, like, he was talking about Gen Z, and he said, like, you know, it used to be that you went to college to lose your virginity, but now you go to lose your sense of humor.
Yeah,
Made me laugh
exactly.
really hard because it was like, yeah, because it's all
Yeah, it's
about,
kinda
you know,
right, yeah.
he's standing up for comedians and how, you know, it's just a joke kind of mentality, right? And how we need to be a little bit more just thick-skinned about it, or, you know, a little less offended by every little thing that pops up, right? You know, I think, look, I think that I said this last week too, or 2 weeks ago when we were talking about it. Like, if you want more people to watch the Oscars, then you need to start honoring movies that people are watching. Like, otherwise, you just need to start recognizing what the public is doing, and then they'll pay attention. But if you don't, then they're not going to watch. Like, you either want ratings or you want, you know, your definition of art. But people aren't going to watch if they're not even able to go see those movies, number one, or if they're not movies that they care about. So that's a big part of it. And if you want to continue down the route of Oscars and still honoring them and honoring cinema in some way, then I think that, Keith, you're right. I think we do need to change. There needs to be a huge evolution of what that show looks like. And I think Will tried to do that a little bit this year, and I could feel it. I could feel it through the broadcast. And it's, Tim, it's what you said, like, it all got overshadowed by this slap, unfortunately, which is just so terrible. And you know,
Yeah, I
it
felt like
sucks.
we were going to see the revival of the Oscars the way this show was going.
Yeah,
And
me
again,
too.
it was like, you know, running at such a great pace as we discussed the format and moving some of those awards to later. So we just didn't wait for the 3 minutes for the team to walk up on stage. They were still announced, they're still recognized. So the pace was going great. Some of the bits were very well done, very well received. The music moments had great moments built in there.
Yeah.
And then that moment you realize, oh wait, we're celebrating some kind of weird click. And that's what's very strange is I don't want it to become the People's Choice Awards or the MTV Music Awards where it's
No.
like best kisser or whatever kind of a thing. We don't want that kind of movement to it. But, and there is something about recognized among your peers, but I feel like the peer group is so insular now that it's lost any recognition to what is actually happening in the audience. And the audience wants to be recognized a little bit too, or understand and cheer for their favorites. And if you don't have that moment or that way of connecting, yeah, what did they have? They had 16 million viewers, which I think is up from the previous year.
A
So
lot.
And this
second
is
lowest of in telecast history.
oh, it's like
Still,
okay,
Yeah,
the last
it's
one was
still
what,
up
4
from
million?
9, which was catastrophic. Let's not
Oh, I thought
forget.
it was
Yeah.
4. Wasn't it 4?
No, 9 was last year during that horrible Oscars. And then this year was 16, but I think that was with some live plus ones built in. So it wasn't necessarily everyone watching live. It was the day after a little bit. And I'm sure the fact that the slap was there probably led to a lot of yeah, to try to get through it. So
yeah.
yeah, it's still yeah, it's still not grabbing attention. I think you're right. But I don't think that's ever going to really happen because they've been complaining about that for years in terms of people, movies get nominated that nobody sees. And the fact that they didn't nominate Spider-Man, which was a critical success, and people watched it. I mean, it's just there's a fundamental disconnect between what the Academy thinks a movie is an art that's worthy of honoring and what the audience really enjoys. And that's just been happening over the course of the last 20 or 30 years in a lot of cultural things. And you know, part of it is they don't necessarily like to be preached to in a lot of ways. Because anytime somebody gets up and starts preaching, it gets a little, you're like, I don't want to hear this. Like,
Which I thought this year
stop.
that was very well handled.
Well, they definitely didn't. They didn't hammer it. Jessica Chastain got a little preachy, but it wasn't horrible. You know, she didn't in any way, shape, or form say, you know, the rest of the country is a bunch of deplorable idiots. But you know, it has to feel like an entertaining show. And there were moments when it felt like it was getting there. But then there were moments that it just became this like little insular party with a bunch of millionaire rich people celebrating. And it has to get away from that. And I don't know how you do that. I mean, listen, you know, Michael Schamberg, as a producer, has been fighting with the Academy for years to try to get them to change the show. You I made a few suggestions in my newsletter, one of which was get it out of LA, which I think would be a huge step in the right direction. And don't go to New York or San Francisco or Chicago, but go somewhere else where people actually, get all these celebrities and stars intermixing with people who actually pay their salaries. Like, and it might lead to a fun dynamic. You never know. Just mix it up a little bit.
They built an entire theater for this show, Keith. That theater was built. The Dolby Theater was built.
I know it was, and unfortunately, it's outlasted its use. It has. Right. It doesn't. It.
Yeah, I mean, 3 years into their 25-year lease or whatever.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, you want to try to reconnect the audience with the movies. That's one way to do it. Take the movies to the audiences.
It's one part, but I think that this is the problem. It's not just one thing. It's going to be a million things have to happen in the same way that the industry's, changing and that theatrical's falling apart. Like, all of this stuff is happening because of a million different factors. And I think one of the other factors is, like you touched on it too, is people don't want to be preached to. They don't want to be preached to in the speeches, but they also don't want to be preached to anymore in the movies. And we're seeing that by box office numbers. We're seeing that in viewership numbers that are being reported. And I think Coda is one of those movies that is this one that people didn't know about. But I think now that they know that it's an inspiring movie, it makes you feel good. I think people are going to kind of gravitate back towards that. And I'm hopeful that, because I think that that's what we need right now. We need more of that inspiration in movies. It used to be all of the actors, everybody that we respect, and we want to be like them, right? We wanted to be like them. We wanted to be movie stars. These are people we put on pedestals. But the way that things are now, nobody wants to be like that. Nobody wants to be preachy. Nobody wants to be elitist. So there's a reason why people aren't putting them on these pedestals anymore, because it's not even just their speeches, but it's the movies that they're giving to people. Everybody, and a lot of it's because those roles are like deeper, like sink your teeth into these roles of being this icky person, right? It kind of started back with it didn't start here, but it's one that pops in my head is Tony Soprano was this character of like this tormented, person that you still kind of loved, even though he was so icky, and he was this great role. And everybody thought, oh, this is how I can get into my acting chops and get these awesome roles of these unlikable people. But now every movie is just filled with unlikable people that nobody wants to watch and nobody can relate to, and nobody enjoys, rooting for that anymore. Whereas the movies we used to watch and the movies that we used to celebrate people for and put them up on that pedestal and give them that Oscar, we were rooting for them because we were rooting for them in the movie they were in too. We loved that movie. Yeah. And I think there's definitely a little bit of intersection there that we don't talk about. So that's one more element of it, I think, too.
I'd be curious. What looking back 5 years from now, how much we'll see as a change of genre that will come up. The thought of what's going to be winners are going to come up. Even if the Academy starts voting for people that they believe are more likable instead of people that are playing specific roles that have a voice and an agenda to something that they were kind of preaching about or want to make sure that had a voice to it. I think we'll see kind of where the trend kind of takes itself, because there's going to be a lot of movement, I think, after this. And
it's likable,
we might always recognize this as a genesis, but it'll be beginning of some new feeling about these shows and who they're going to get giving the awards to.
It's relatability, and we can't, I think the public can't relate anymore, and that's a problem.
Yeah, well said. All right, until next year's Oscars, I think I appreciate you guys doing this recap. There was a lot that happened, a lot to unpack. I think the world has unpacked so much of this already, but at least I thought our audience deserved its own kind of recap of what we thought happened and some of the thoughts. And of course, the moment we had to address it somehow, some way. Otherwise, we'd just be tone deaf to what's actually happening in Hollywood.
What's actually happening out there. Yep.
And we'll say, like, this whole show is about how Hollywood is breaking. It's falling apart. It's devolving into some area, and then therefore there's opportunities to break through, and new things are breaking in. So Hollywood is breaking, as we cover here every week. Robin,
breaking point. Everybody hits one.
Exactly. Thank you again for being part of our amazing show. And thanks to Lydia and Connor and Michelle and those teams behind us that did an extra show this week. Thanks for putting this together for us. Keith, we'll talk to you on Friday.
See you on Friday.
Thanks for having me, gentlemen.
Sure.